Hi, I'm Cameron, and I don't just read comics, I love them. On today's episode of Cameron Reads Comics, my friend Jach comes back to talk about one of the most anticipated stories of the decade, Batman 3 Jokers. I am so surprised that I've gone this long in the comic book podcast game without a single episode on Batman, but that's about to change. Batman doesn't understand how or why, but the fact is certain. The man he has spent a lifetime chasing isn't one man at all. There are 3 Jokers. Now that he knows the unbelievable truth, Bruce needs real answers. Joined by Barbara Gordon and Jason Todd, 2 former victims of the Joker's brutality, the Dark Knight is finally on a path to defeat the madman once and for all. Every last one of him. Remember to follow us on Instagram and now Twitter at Cameron Reads Comics, and make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Remember, there are full spoilers ahead for Batman 3 Jokers, so consider yourself warned. Now, here is your episode on Batman 3 Jokers. Okay, well, hey Jach, welcome back to the Cameron Reads Comics podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I just threw on the record.
You just went for it.
We go.
No warning.
No, I'm like, hey,
I don't need it. It's fine.
If you're not ready, then you better get ready.
I'm probably not ready anyway, so.
Okay, so this week we read Batman 3 Jokers. Mm-hmm. But before we even talk about that, Jach, I want to talk to you about making observations.
Yeah.
When did this Instagram page start? And like last time you were here, we talked about like super sick sneaker culture.
Yeah.
But like now I'm like, wow, you have a platform for, I don't know, your hot takes on sneaker culture and like just like style. It's just like a great gram in general, the most aesthetically pleasing. So just tell us about it.
Yeah. So I started this in July, and I have been like collecting sneakers this last year, kind of when the pandemic started. I mean, I started like a little bit before that, but I kind of like got really into it last fall, like fall 2019. And then like when the pandemic hit, that's kind of just like, that was all I had to do, was just nothing else to do. So I was like, well, I'm just going to like keep doing this. And so I just like started collecting more and more sneakers and just like got more into it. And then I was like talking to my fiance, and I was just like, I just want to do something with this. Like I have all this stuff, and I like was really passionate about it, but like I didn't really want to put it on my own Instagram. I didn't want to like make all my like family and friends just like look at that stuff all the time. And I was like,
yep.
I feel like you can relate to this. Like you get self-conscious,
exactly
putting like your hobby and like your stuff you love, like, and it sounds so weird to say that, but like you putting like your side stuff or like some like new project like on your Instagram, like you're like, oh, like I don't want like everybody to have to see this from me every single day, or like this be all I am to these people. But so creating a new space was kind of like really freeing to me. Like, okay, like I'm just gonna start something new, and like I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere or like turn into anything. It was just like for me and just for fun. And I started by like just posting my own pictures, but also like finding stuff on the internet that I just liked and like just reposting stuff. And then I started building a following, and I was like,
you have like a big following on it.
Yeah, and I mean I definitely have a lot to go like compared to other people I follow, but then I was like, well, I'm just gonna start posting just my stuff then. So I deleted all that other stuff and just started posting my own pictures. And yeah, it's been cool. I've gotten to meet like a lot of people from around the world that I usually would not have ever come into contact with. And,
no way.
Like I have friends in the Philippines and in Singapore and in Texas and random places. Yeah. But it's been really cool, and I feel like it's given me something to kind of like latch onto and just something fun to do, like when nothing else is going on in the world. And I mean, but nothing else is going on in the world while everything is going on in the world.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, while we are being good stewards, being at home and, posting our content. And, and like, honestly, like, it's just a great reflection of, I don't know, just like, it's also a lot of the style. While it is, the sneakers and maybe some of the items of the ensemble are like unaffordable, Some of them are like, you can go to your standard Goodwill, find a decent pair of Levi's 501s, and like those pull the entire thing together,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like I'm not interested in like hype beast stuff, and I try to like stay away from that. And like, I mean, like some of the shoes I get are like kind of pricey, but like I also like just try to throw in like really regular clothes, and like most of my stuff I get from like thrift stores or like just used stuff online, and that's kind of what I've tried to like center it around. And it's been really nice. Like I don't own any t-shirts that were more than $40 like I'm not dropping $200 on a t-shirt, and like it's just not for me.
I would never.
And I know people do that, and like they love that, and like that's awesome. Like I mean, 6 months ago I would never have said I would spend hundreds of dollars on sneakers, and it's like, but that's much easier for me to palette now. So
yeah, and especially it's resale value for that. Like that's really everything you're saying is like, for all the fans and listeners, they can attribute that to my comic book collecting. Yeah, it's literally been me. Like, I started selling my collection because I was just pouring money into it, and I want higher priced books, but I'm like, I sell my collection, and then guess what? If I want to go buy a bigger, better book, whatever, I want to get that for me, it'd be like Avengers 3 or 4, like the first Silver Age Captain America book. If I want to get one of those, then I'll sell all these books because they retain their value.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like sneakers, like it's been great because like it's almost like, I mean, I don't know anything about real estate or like any kind of market.
I don't disagree with the example you're saying though.
No, yeah, but it's like people buy property and like the values go up and down and things change and like things become more valuable, or like it's kind of not necessarily like just like having money. It's about like investing in something, and that's kind of changes. It can get more valuable or less valuable, and it's like some of the sneakers I have now, like I would never have imagined myself purchasing, but it's like, it's kind of like I worked my way up by like, oh, I bought this sneaker that was pretty affordable, and I traded up for this one, and I sold that one, and I bought this. So it's like, I don't make a lot of money. Like I don't have a lot of money. It's like, but I feel like with anything, like if you devote enough time into it, enough energy into it, like you can make those kinds of things happen to where it's like money is not no longer a non-issue, but it's not as big of a problem as it seemed at the very beginning.
Yeah, or even it's not as big of an expense.
No. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not a huge obstacle to it. Just takes time and energy, and it's kind of like one step at a time. And
you're selling 2 pairs of sneakers to get that one you really want.
Exactly.
And so it's like, and that's literally my number one book for the fans that want to know. Maybe you don't want to know, but Saga #1 is just like, I want that in a 9.8, and I will sell. I'm selling all these whatever. I have this Superman run that's been going on for 30 issues, and I'm like, I don't need these 30 issues sitting here. I can make whatever. I don't know. Let's assume $70 off that. $70 towards that one book that I actually really want. That's great. And then it's not me spending $400 at one time. It's me spending just the lump sum that I saved. It's 3 or 4 other collections that I had.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, there was a pair of sneakers that I was like obsessed with when I first got into sneakers.
What were they?
They were these yellow Nike Dunks. Like
were they high tops?
They were high tops.
Were they the ones you posted today?
They were the ones posted today, yeah.
They're so cool.
When I first saw those, when I first got into sneakers, I was like, oh my God, like I want these so bad. And I couldn't find them anywhere. And they're like super rare. And I eventually like found them like around my birthday, so like a few months ago, and then I've had them for a little bit, and I sold them today. And it's like, and it's kind of thing. It's where it's like, you go through phases, and you like things change. It's like you get your like prized possession, the thing you really want, and then like you have it, and it's like, this is really cool. Like I'm glad I had this for a bit. Like time to let it go. Like,
that's exactly.
Yeah, it's like it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm just like latching on these things like forever to hold them like as like my prized possessions. It's kind of more like enjoying those. Like, okay, like I got to be with this for a few months, and like I'm content now. The time I have with it, I'm happy to see it go as well.
Yeah, that's me literally with my collecting. It's like, at first I really just wanted the biggest collection, and now I don't. You know what I mean? I'd like, I don't want the biggest comic book collection ever. It's like, wow, I'm actually running out of space right now. I'm filled stuff to the gills, and so I'm like, I would really like a just great quality collection. Like, I buy my books monthly, I read them, and they give me that value, and then once I've read them, I'm like, is this the best book I've ever read? If it's not, I'm fine getting rid of it so that, again, I can get to that Saga 1 or the thing I really want.
Yeah, it's like there's people I follow, like I'll see on Instagram, they have like these huge walls of like hundreds of sneakers and like all the best sneakers, like every Jordan, every Dunk, and like all these like crazy expensive pairs. But it's just like nothing to me. It's like, it just seems like a wall. And it's like, the ones that stick with me the most are like the collections that are like super precise and like super specific, to where it's like, oh, like I would not have imagined like that rotation together, or like those 4 sneakers together, but like these are like their top 4 sneakers, and like they really center around this kind of style, and I'm like, wow, like that stuck with me. And it's like, it's not necessarily about like the quantity, it's about like not only like the quality, but seeing like something that's specific to the person, to where it's like, oh, like that person like had that vision of that thing, and like these were important to them. Like that really sticks with me, and I remember that now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so everyone go follow Making Observations on Instagram because it is so cool.
Check it out. And if you don't like sneakers and it's not for you, like, no big deal. It does not matter.
I'm like, literally, like, I just think of, and we talked about this briefly last time, but like, I just really find it to be more of like, I don't know, sneaker culture and just like, I guess collection culture is just very, they're very similar. And even just like kind of the hype clothing, or like really what I'm getting into is like a lot of those vintage, like, I don't want to say grunge, but like graphic tees that are coming out.
Yeah.
They are, I think, accompanied so well with like a good decent pair of sneakers, and it's almost like ironic fashion, but it's like, it's hype. And so me, as much as I love like superhero tees, I'm like, retro superhero tees are so sick.
Yeah.
And so that's really where I'm like, oh, let me go thrift so I can get like a jacket. The Making Observations Instagram inspired me to go get a pair of Nike Blazers.
Heck yeah.
And they are so clean. And I was like, Jack had the yellow swoosh ones, and I was like, oh, I love those so much. And so my favorite color is purple, and they had a purple pair for cheaper. So I'm like, let me go get the purple pair.
They're rad.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so that with like a sick Catwoman tee, it's game over. So
now we're talking.
That is literally, go follow them on Instagram and, you know, spice up your wardrobe, maybe get inspired.
It's easy to spice up your wardrobe.
It is. Yeah. It really is. And I'm like, it's affordable. Like,
you don't have to break the bank. Yeah.
You don't, especially like thrifting. It's like, oh man. And also, all those hype beast tees are sick. So I'm like, I'm not going to buy Supreme, but like, honestly, have you ever watched Slobby's World?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, dude. Go on Netflix, go watch Slobby's World. It's this dude, Slobby Robbie, and all he does is he buys, sells, and trades like vintage. But it's all like a nostalgia market. I think that's the point I'm really trying to make, is that sneaker culture, comic book collecting culture, they're similar. It's all nostalgia based, you know?
Yeah. Is Slobby Robbie a family name?
His name is actually Slobbert Slobbert P. Robert.
Yeah, Slobbert P. Robert.
Okay, so we read Batman 3 Jokers,
yes.
and so what did you think? What made you want to read this book?
Yeah, so I was interested in it just by so I didn't really know a lot about this. I know there was like some sort of fiasco with a chair prior to this, and Batman finding out something on the chair or whatever.
Oh my gosh, it was a fiasco.
I heard it was a mess. So, but that's when you found out there were 3 Jokers, potentially? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so in the Justice League, really kind of a lot of the New 52 Justice League series, there's a Dark Side War. Yeah. That's kind of what the entire series builds up to. And Batman pretty much takes the Mobius chair, which is the
Mobius chair, that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, and have you watched Justice League Unlimited? Yeah. And like Metron is a character that comes up at the very end of Justice League Unlimited. He's like pretty much this omniscient being who's a new god. He's like a fourth world, whatever. And when you're in his chair, he kind of knows everything. Yeah. And so Batman becomes, all the Justice League members become like gods in the series. It's weird. I'm not a huge fan of it, but Batman gets the Mobius chair, and so he's able to ask any question. And so, question being, who's the identity of the Joker? You find out there's 3 Jokers, and that's really kind of what that moment is.
Did you not have any more questions after that?
That was it.
That's all he wanted to ask the chair.
I'm like, I'll ask. I'm like, I guess that's the one. But then this series is weird.
Yeah,
because. And we go full spoilers here, but I'm like, because he always knew the identity of the Joker. Yeah. So I'm like, what the heck? Why do we care?
What's the big reveal? Yeah.
I don't know. And that was kind of one of my issues with this series.
This is the DC Black Label, right?
Yeah.
So it's like an Elseworld kind of story.
Elseworlds in quotations. Like, I just don't know. I think it's up to you. I think it's all Elseworlds and that kind of stuff is always up to you.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's canon. So
it's just like leaving themselves a back door to where if they do want to do something with this in the future, they can, but if they don't want to, they can just say it was a different world.
Yeah. I'm like, and that'll bring up a question I have to ask you later. But
okay.
So you wanted to read this because it was also like a big blockbuster book. It was like everybody's talking about this. I knew it's hard to be in the like
superhero media world and not know about this. So
Yeah.
like I wanted to read it just because I wanted to be in the know of what was happening without just like looking at what happens online.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's pretty easy read, you know.
Yeah, it was very short.
It was, yeah,
3 issues. That's it.
3 issues, and they're like premium size, but even so, they're probably like 40 pages each. It was easy.
Honestly, I read it online illegally. I did not buy
Dang.
it.
It's okay because I bought my copies, and I have literally 5 copies of issue number 1, which is worth just as much as you buying. Literally, I was like, let me get the variant covers, and then there's like 17 variant covers, and I'm like, I don't care how many Jokers there are, frankly.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
I feel like I've had enough of one Joker.
So wait, how did you? Yeah, seriously, we'll talk about that. But how familiar were you with the Bat family encounters with the Joker? Like, have you read Killing Joke? Have you read Death in the Family?
Yeah, so I know all the big stuff. Like I know Death in the Family. I know the Killing Joke. I know all the history behind Death in the Family and like Jason Todd and like all the huge write-in campaign and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was nice to see knowing that I think was made the reading experience like a lot easier.
Yeah.
To where I didn't have to like look up anything. Like I was in the know the entire time.
Yeah.
Especially somebody who like casually reads comics. Like I just kind of read big stuff.
And this is good. You know, this is a great big comic to read. You know, dive right in.
Yeah. So I'm pretty caught up on all the big moments. I didn't really read any New 52 Joker. I read like some of it, and I was like, this is a little bit whatever.
It's here and it's there.
Yeah.
Some guys like literally like love that one, and some guys like, you know, it's fine.
I felt like they just tried to go too hard on it. Like, oh, the Joker is so over the top.
He's literally like, they made him like immortal.
Yeah, and it's like, I really don't care about this.
Yeah.
It's felt like overkill for me. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. Personally, I'm like, let's just. And I've said it before, but we could just take a break from the Joker for a while.
Yep. We can just put him on a shelf and it's fine.
Yeah, I'm like 5 years without him, I'd be doing just fine. Like, let's really get that big Two-Face story. I've always been hoping for. It's fine. So you're super familiar with them. Where do you think, based on actually what we were just saying too, but where do you think like the Joker is ranked amongst the best comic book villains?
Yeah, so I think you can't. I mean, even if I am a little like weary of the Joker, like you can't.
That's a great word for it.
Yeah, you can't like deny like how great of a villain he is, and I feel like the most interesting he gets is when it's like kind of like him and Batman as like parallels of a story together, to where they're like kind of like, you know, you see like two sides of the same coin kind of thing in their stories, and like kind of how like interact with each other, and like less about like Joker like, you know, drowning 100 people in a river or whatever. Like I don't care about that as much. It's like I like it more so their interactions and like kind of like, oh, and that's what I do like about this story. Like, I mean, I feel like part of the story, like the Joker like explains himself too much, I think, to the reader, like explains his motives or his thinking, and it's like I think the Joker is more interesting when he does less of that.
Yeah.
And when you don't really know exactly what's going on in his head. But I think one of the stronger parts for me, at least, of the story, and it kind of highlighted that thing I like about the Joker, and that he's just obsessed with Batman, and he loves him. Yeah. Like it's like a devotion to him, and like to where it doesn't care that he knows his identity. It doesn't care like any other stuff. Like he just wants to. It's all been about him, always, and
it's not about Bruce. It's about Batman.
Yeah, and it's like he talks about like but he talks about like when he was like killing Jason Todd like the first time, to where like it was all about Batman. Like he didn't care about Jason, he didn't care about any of that. Like his only motivation was to like make an impact on Batman and like just, you know, show himself to him in some kind of way. And I think that's very interesting, and I like that a lot. And I think there are more interesting ways to explore that in this book, but
Yeah, I think that it's, no matter what, how anyone wants to feel, I think Joker is the number one comic book villain of all time. And like, I think this story leans into the versatility of the character, you know? And so I think that's kind of what makes him as popular as he is. You know, he is, no matter what you want to say, he is like the scariest. And it's his unpredictability, and it's how many facets there are to this one character. And that's why that's why I'm not a huge fan of the 3 Jokers, you know, 3 separate entities, because I think having, Heath Ledger did it perfectly when you just kind of have the unreliable narrator.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's so many different parts to who he is that you can't really get your thumb on him.
Yeah.
And so that was the strength of him, and this leans into that, but I don't know, maybe not in the way I would have preferred.
Yeah, it's like the more I feel like for the Joker especially, like the more you explain about something, like the less interesting it becomes.
Yeah.
And like the more you know about, like the more information you have, like the less interesting it is. To where it's like, oh, like like to bring back Heath Ledger, it's like a lot of the great part about that movie. It's like you have no idea which story is the real one, if any of them are real, or if all of them are real. Like they all could have some sort of bearing in truth, but it's like that not knowing makes the character a lot more interesting. And it makes it to where it's not about that which backstory is true. It's about that you can't trust whatever he's saying, and he's just like there's a lot more chaos going on inside of him and around him than you would think at first. And it's like to where it makes it not about that. It makes it about something else. And I think there's just like, and leaving it to the mystery or to the imagination is really a great part of that character. And having the explanation be like, oh, like the reason he changed over all these years is because there was 3 of them. The reason the Joker, 40 years ago was way different than he is now is because that was a different Joker. And it's like, do we need this explanation? Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, and like, I think that some of it walks a pretty thin line, like I think that something like The Killing Joke, where we did get kind of a definitive Joker origin, I think that worked really well.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like, obviously that story is like so prolific. But something like this, I'm like, I don't know. It's weird because I'm like, it kind of was trying to do the same thing that one did in a different way and kind of really give us some definitive points about their relationship. And I don't know. I just think some of it was better left unsaid. Like, how did you, I guess you're off the cuff, but how did you feel about, them knowing one another's identities?
Yeah, it felt like a throwaway moment. Mm-hmm. But I think that was probably part of the point to where it was like, to show like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like it really does not matter at all. I think that's kind of, if they really wanted it to be a bigger thing, they probably would have like made it a story point rather than like a throwaway dialogue moment. But I think it exemplifies like whether he knows or doesn't know, it doesn't matter to him, like the Joker, like, or to Batman really, even, because it's not going to change anything. And like, the situation for Joe Chill, like that definitely influenced that, but the quote unquote real Joker at the end like wasn't on board for that and wasn't interested in that. So like again, it's like the truest embodiment of the real Joker, quote unquote, like would be the one that doesn't care either way.
Yeah.
Like the information is irrelevant.
I feel that way too, because I'm like, I don't know, some of this, I guess that, and maybe that's why the story kind of fell flat for me. And I'm like, by no means do I think it was a like bad story, but it just wasn't amazing.
Yeah,
it wasn't. I don't think it was as groundbreaking as it was kind of like advertised to be.
Yeah, I wish they would have gone bolder and like done crazier stuff, because like I feel like with The Killing Joke, it wasn't afraid to pull any punches, and it wasn't afraid to like divert from what we know about like Batman stories, and like. And it was it wasn't afraid to like put Barbara Gordon in a wheelchair and like shoot and like paralyze her and like all this like groundbreaking stuff for a Batman story that's like very different from what we're used to, and like has ripple effects to where it's like this one, it felt like it was trying to reference all the stuff that we know about Batman and like the stories we think of as quote unquote canon, while also trying to do something different that is not canon maybe. Yeah. And it's like just pick one, and it's like where it's like The Killing Joke, it's like that's a story, but it's like its own story kind of thing, and like later on, like parts of that can like creep their way into like other Batman comics, but like it still stands on its own. To where this one, it kind of felt like it was trying to have its foot in both lanes, and
that's exactly it.
And it didn't really work for me in that
because
sense.
The Killing Joke was actually funny enough meant to be an Elseworld, and then it became canon because it was so well received.
Yeah, exactly.
And like maybe it was supposed to be also like the last Batman Joker story because I think the implication there is that Batman kills the Joker at the end.
Yeah.
And we kind of, I think you're right about this one kind of getting its feet in both lanes, because it's like it didn't know what it wanted to be, and so it almost kind of did the opposite, where it was like it's an Elseworld, but it also can be canon, like and I'm like, I don't know if I'm into that. Like I'd rather just like double down on either one.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like it's doing like the reverse contextualization.
Yeah.
In the sense to where it's like the Killing Joke later on became canon and then like
Yeah.
later on influenced things to where it's like now this one's trying to go back and influence things like, oh, like these things were going on during Death in the Family, like this thing was going on during the Killing Joke, and it's like, no, like leave those stories alone. Like those are great stories.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Winter Soldier being like created, where when he was created, it's like, wow, he's created in 2001, but then you find out that he was present in all these events, and it's like, he killed JFK, la la la, and I'm like, really? I'm like,
we don't need this.
I'm like, I don't need that.
Yeah.
So
just tell a story now.
I'm like, it's fine. I'm like, they're allowed to have been creating Jokers, but you know, whatever. But okay, so did you find the reasons for the 3 Jokers existing to be feasible?
I guess. I don't know. Like,
me neither.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's something unique about the Joker to where it was like, it feels like a lightning in the bottle situation to where it's like, it feels like you can't recreate that. Mm-hmm. And the sense that they could be, oh, well, we could just make a new Joker and we can make a new one. It's like, then what's special about the Joker?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and I guess like it's more like the Joker is like a state of being, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I it's confusing, man. And like, I think their reasoning was fallible, and it worked for the sake of the story. I think it was, it was sound.
Yeah.
But whether or not it's my preference is a different story.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like Joker and I like Batman, but I'm like, I don't want to come off like I'm a hater on the story. You know?
No, it wasn't bad. Like it was not by no means a bad story. Like I did not like not enjoy myself at any point.
Yeah, because I'm like, I think some of the parts of all the characters are true. I think this was like an exceptional representation of Jason Todd.
Yeah, I wish they did more with him.
Yeah,
see, that's the thing. Like I like a lot of different things in this book. Like I like the Jason Todd stuff.
Yeah.
I like the Barbara Gordon stuff.
Yeah.
Like I like the Joker. I like some of the Joker stuff. I just wish these were like separate stories that were like spread out a lot more.
Yes.
Rather than like little glimpses of stuff that I like packed together in 3 issues.
Were you a fan of the Barbara Jason relationship?
No.
Me neither.
It felt just like so out of nowhere. It's like it felt just like, oh yeah, we'll throw this in as well.
If I was to like, because I think you're right. Maybe just some of this stuff in the story was like, I like this and I like this, but then together, it's just like when you're mashing them all together, it's almost, what that felt like to me was Rise of Skywalker when Rey and Kylo Ren kiss.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a little too perfect of an example because it's just like
it's exactly that.
It's like, what?
Why do we need this?
Yeah.
Okay, so I like the idea that Jason is like so emotionally desperate and like compromised that he like is looking for something like that just because he's depressed, like not because he actually has feelings for her.
Yeah.
And like, but the fact that like she was the one that kind of initiated it felt really weird. And like, then it was like, oh, but it's over now. But he's like, actually, I love you. And it's like, when did this start happening?
Yeah. And then like literally the note on the door kind of sequence. I'm like, what? Like,
yeah.
What?
It's like there's some. I feel like there could have been something there, but I feel like if it was done a little bit differently, to where like she wasn't the one that like kind of pushed it at first, it was more like him, like kind of like if you want to do that, like him, like kind of like he's pining after like the affection from Bruce, so he is like projecting that onto Barbara because she's the only one like paying attention to him in that moment. Yeah. If you wanted to spread that out and kind of like explore like why Jason is like dealing with these kinds of things and like kind of get into that more and make it more about like his own trauma and like rather than like some kind of like forbidden love between them, that could have been interesting.
Yeah, well, because they've also like, I think that number one, I don't think Barbara should be used as a object of male affection. You know what I mean? I'm like, she's a competent, capable, awesome. I think Barbara Gordon's probably just one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to sidekicks, I'd argue Batgirl like is one of my top 2. I think, it goes Robin, Tim Drake, then probably Barbara Gordon, because I think Barbara is just such an amazing, amazing character. And so, but we've already seen this done. And that's why I'm like, why do I need this again? Like,
Yeah.
you know, we've seen it done in like Dick and Barbara.
Yeah.
I'm like, do that all day long.
Yeah,
I want them to get
exactly.
married. I
Yeah.
think they're the only two that understand one another. But I'm like, seeing Jason just be like, I think you're right though, and I think that it kind of bridges the gap for me. Him just being so wounded and so kind of like unstable to desperately pining after the first person to give him kind of like true affection.
Yeah.
And just like, you know, platonic affection. If
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah. And even back to bringing it back to Barbara, it's like even like they were part like it kind of dealt with her trauma a little bit and like her like the things she was going through and like having the Joker like reemerge and stuff like that and like and it got into that a little bit, but then it like kind of didn't follow up with it, and it was like I feel like if if it explored Barbara's kind of journey like in dealing with like trying to like take down the Joker and then like separately like dealt with like Jason's trauma and like all that kind of stuff, like if you took more time to like get into those things, it could have maybe worked in a way that was like somewhat more interesting.
I think you're right. I think this book just needed some more time.
Yeah, it needed some more space to explore these kind of things, or just don't do them. Just don't get into them. But I feel like in doing so, like Batman was not really in the book very much.
Yeah,
like I feel like we didn't spend much time like in those, especially in like all that stuff about like Jason. It's like I would have loved to see more about like Bruce's side of that. Or like Bruce kind of dealing with that, or even like dealing that with Jason, if they wanted to get into that. But like the only time they really had like any kind of confrontation was like Bruce was like, "You don't get it."
To Barbara?
No, to Jason.
Oh yeah.
Like Jason and Bruce had like a 1 second confrontation.
Yeah.
And then they never explored it again, and they decided to go to like Jason and Barbara.
Yeah.
And it's like if you want to get into all that kind of stuff, like have Bruce be a part of that.
Yeah.
And like really like develop that kind of story, because like. They get into stuff like, oh, Jason's like, oh, like, you know, you set us up for all this stuff, like you're responsible, and it's like, sure, like that's fine, like let's talk about that. And then Bruce is like, you don't understand, like you don't get it, like, and like Bruce has a whole side of that, they just don't get into it, and they just like never address it again. It's like that's interesting, like spend more time with that, please.
Yeah, and I'm like, obviously Batman's relationship, Batman being this freaking stone cold brick wall that he is, like. His relationships with his sidekicks have always been just like contentious.
Yeah.
You know, and so I get it. And I see it. And I see why he's also so distant from that too, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good enough story reason.
Yeah.
I'm like, I really like his moment talking about that with Barbara, where she's like, how come you never took the time to kind of like reorient him into the world, you know, try and fix what made Jason broken.
Yeah.
And he's like, I thought he'd be more like you, like being resilient. And when you think about it, if Barbara's resilient, I think the way it makes sense to me is because of her father.
Yeah.
Like, her father's there and he loves her very much. You know what I mean? Like, Commissioner Gordon is trying to be the best father to his daughter.
Yeah.
And he's present in the ways that Bruce will never be.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Barbara had what Jason did not, and that Bruce couldn't be that for Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we kind of saw that. And he was hoping that Jason could be like Barbara, but I'm like, they are very different people.
That Barbara Bruce moment was a good moment.
Yeah.
I did like that part of the comic.
Also, I just want to say, Barbara's costume, that is my favorite Batgirl costume.
So good.
Those
all
color
the
schemes.
costumes in this.
Oh, yeah.
And the art is so good. Like, I see, the one thing I like about these Jokers, I love the look of the Jokers.
Oh, yeah.
It's exactly how I imagine the Joker looking. Like, I don't need like a hulked out buff Joker. Or like slicked hair back, or it's like, or like a weird hipster haircut Joker, like in the New 52. It's like,
and they even kind of like alluded to it.
They reference it a little bit. It's like, I like this this is how I imagine the Joker.
Yeah,
and with Mark Hamill's voice in the background.
That's exactly, and like my favorite Joker. Here's a point. I don't know if I've ever said this on mic, but my favorite Joker is not the ones that have really like messed up makeup. I really love Jokers with perfect makeup.
Yeah.
I think like, you know, for all the knocks on Jared Leto's Joker, I love that his like lipstick is on perfectly. Like give or take the tattoos, I don't care.
Yeah.
The lipstick's on perfectly and he's always wearing a suit. I'm like, yep, that's my preferred Joker. I think that's 10 times scarier.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And so, yes, but my next question to you, actually, let's talk about the art. And then maybe we can lean that into favorite moment.
Yeah.
Did you have one?
So, yes, I liked the Joe Chill stuff.
Oh, really?
I did like that. So I think that I liked the end of it because I like that Batman had to like I like when we kind of get to see a little bit of the humanity from Batman to where like that he's not just like the stone cold like character. It's like it brings back to Just League Unlimited. It's like my favorite episode with the Royal Flush Gang and Ace.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
epilogue.
Yeah,
Amazing
epilogue.
episode.
Best episode of the show, I think.
Literally like makes me cry still.
Yeah. And it's like you see like there is a human underneath the cowl and it's like and he's always there.
Yeah.
Even if he's not portraying that, like he's always there and like he is if anything like the most emotional like member of the league.
Oh yeah.
And it's like so you see a little bit of that here to where it's like this is the man who like took his entire life away and like when faced with it like he feels pity for him and like he feels his pain with him and like his sympathy and like to where he forgives him and he lets him go and it's like he saves him and it's like that moment of Bruce like having to seeing where he is now like as Batman and like still dealing with all that trauma like seeing that journey for him to overcome towards like no like I'm looking at the man who took my life away and I'm choosing like forgiveness, I'm choosing to save him, I'm choosing empathy and it's like I feel like that was a cool moment to watch. I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really nice to see from Batman, and I like when we see that emotional side of him, and we see his humanity come back to where sometimes you feel like it's not there anymore.
I agree with you, and it's also funny because I'm like, I think you're right, and your point made me reflect a little bit better on that moment too, because I come from the camp of, I don't think Batman should know. I don't like Joe Chill as an idea for a character. I'm like, I don't want Batman to know who killed his parents. I'm really from this kind of school of thought where I would rather he spends his entire life trying to find out that one mystery and he'll never know. I think it's more in the same way, people don't like that. People like or dislike that Rey's a Palpatine. I'm like, I think the story works better if we don't know.
Yeah.
It was just some criminal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some one-off guy who, was vagabond, came to Gotham and left, and we'll never know, and he'll never find out who did it.
Yeah.
So, but, to double down on what you're saying too, I think that I really liked the moment where, you're right, as Joe Chill fades out, Bruce is holding his hand, and Joe Chill knows who Bruce is.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't have the capacity to apologize in the way that he would have liked to is kind of poetic, but then he kind of got his moment too at the end there.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think I am a fan too.
Yeah.
That's a good comparison to Epilogue.
Yeah, it felt very similar to me. But it's like, and I see what you're saying about not knowing who it is. Like, it could have been anybody. It's like, every criminal he stops could have been the one who killed his parents, and like that as a motivating factor. But I also kind of like at the same time like knowing that Joe Chill is gone, and like it wasn't Batman who took him down. Like it's just like he's a nobody, and him having to live with that. Like then seeing, okay, what's now his motivation for fighting crime and for donning the cowl and for being the Batman? Like, is it still the death of his parents?
Yeah.
Knowing that is no longer a threat or is no longer a problem? Like,
he got justice for them.
Yeah, he got justice for them. So it's like, and he now at this point, like, has forgiven that man and watched him die. It's like, why is he still Batman? Like, what are the other things that motivate him to don the cowl at night? Yeah,
and I think personally, coming from I think now that he has obviously other reasons too.
Yeah,
and like that he has resolved that within himself, and I don't know. I don't know if I believe that he continues to be Batman for the memory of his parents.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It opens the door to exploring those other reasons why. Yeah, it's like someone like Jason could be a walking reminder of why.
Yeah, exactly. And like, he wants to be able to save people, and like now that he is Batman, I don't think he'll ever stop no matter what anyways.
Yeah.
So did you have a favorite character in this story? I mean, my favorite was Joker number 3.
I don't know. I think I liked Barbara a lot. I don't really read a lot of Batgirl stuff.
Yeah.
I don't really read a ton of comics. I kind of just read the big ones.
Good.
The
And Squirrel Girl.
and Squirrel Girl. I read the big stuff when the big moments when they happen. But I really enjoyed her character in it, and I think I enjoyed her dynamic with Bruce a lot.
Yeah.
As kind of like a confidant / like equal. It felt like, and it didn't feel like someone who was like much younger than him or like much, but it also didn't feel like a romantic interest.
Yeah.
And some of that kind of dynamic and that kind of energy. Like it just felt like a comrade, I guess. And like, but somebody who could speak truth to him. And I felt like they had that great dynamic to where like he actually was listening to her when she said things to him, and like, and he kind of deferred to her at moments, and like that. I really liked that back and forth. But yeah, I feel like it was a really strong Barbara Gordon interpretation, and I feel like it really encapsulated that character for me, to where most of my interactions with her from The Killing Joke or like in passing in different books, and it's like I really felt like I understood that character now at this point, especially like the moments we got alone with her, and like kind of just even like her not talking, just kind of her like doing life, and like
her on the treadmill.
Yeah,
man.
the treadmill. It's like that was
a great just sequence.
Yeah, like I felt that for sure, and I was like, dang, like I feel like I understand what she's going through. So I really liked Barbara Gordon. I love Jason Todd. Like Jason Todd's one of my favorite characters in comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like, why does he keep coming out? I'm like, Under the Red Hood works once, but then I'm just not a big anti-hero guy. I think that's what I'm like. Give me the black and white moral comedy. You know what I mean?
I like that he killed the Joker.
Oh,
I
really?
felt like they at least like went for it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, okay, yeah. If there's a caveat to where there's 3 of them.
Yeah,
It's not
literally
the Joker. Like, he killed a Joker.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm glad that they actually like made him do something that's like a little bit over the top, and is like very not what Batman stands for, and like it allows me to like, because I don't want just like an edgy Robin. I don't want like a Robin who's like, oh, like I'll kick a criminal a little bit harder, or like I'll like talk back to Batman, and like go pow. It's like, no, like if you're gonna be the thorn in his side, like I would like to see like him be a thorn in his side.
Oh yeah.
And I really actually did like that about this book, that they actually kind of went for it, and like there's ramifications for that.
Oh yeah, I think they nailed it.
Yeah, and you see Batman kind of fold to where it's like, I don't know what to do. Like I can't really do anything. Like I don't know what to do with him. Yeah,
with this kid, or like, you know, because Jason. I think I think you're totally right too. This story nails Jason. This probably is my favorite Jason Todd story, because, you know, obviously shelving Under the Red Hood, because that was just its own animal. But, and you also, here's a fun publishing fact though. It literally went like Batman Hush, then Batman Under the Red Hood, like back to back events. It's like, whoa, give us a minute to breathe.
Seriously.
I'm like, they're like, here's an amazing Batman mystery story and featuring the greatest art of all time, and then here is the Robin that died. Anyway, I'm sorry, but that was so good. But
perfect book.
I'm like, seriously, but I really liked. I honestly think Jason was my favorite.
Yeah,
I'm like, because I think you're right about him killing the Joker. He needed to go too far, but also everything surrounding, you know, like that moment too. I thought that moment was perfectly well spent, where he's like, "Oh, you're my little Robin."
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Oh, you are literally wearing my old disguise. Like you want to be something different, but you are a product of me so much. And it's like, oh, and that is the perfect kind of like Joker moment. Too,
yeah,
where it was talking about his favorite. Like, it's such a Joker moment where he crawled under our skin, you know, as the readers, by saying something like that, and I was like, ooh, like, it was so menacing, and it was just right, and then the perfect little moment at the end where Barbara's like, how could you do that? And he's like, Barbara, you never miss. And it's like, oh,
it's a real comedian and Dr. Manhattan moment.
Seriously, and like, you know, he was leaning. I don't know if I love when writers try to replicate like Alan Moore, you know, because that's a very exclusive moment, but it was perfect.
Yeah.
Like that one was very well done, very true to the spirit.
Yeah.
So
I can't say anything else about that.
And Jason Fabok's art, just like his storytelling. I think also I really want to lean into the art in this book is incredible, and if we want to talk about it being a spiritual successor to Watchmen, then I think if you want to compare Jason Fabok to Brian Boland, or sorry, not Watchmen, but Killing Joke, both Alan Moore works, but Brian Boland and Jason Babcock's art, I think, is so similar. Just like spiritual successor, and just like how perfect the lines are working on the page, and like it is just magnificent storytelling.
Well, yeah, I feel like Batman is exactly like how I would imagine him in my head, and it's like it's like a little bit of the classic stuff with the suit, but it definitely feels it feels like a modern take on Batman, to where it's like it's not like New 52 modern. Yeah. But it definitely feels like all the best of everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a lot of Batman's greatest hits, and that's what the story wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so last question for you, Jack. What would you rate the story out of 10?
I'd give it like a 6.
Yeah, honestly, I was talking to my girlfriend before I was recording today, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm reading this story for the podcast." And she says, "Oh, how is it?" And I'm like, "Honestly, I think it's like anywhere for me from like a 6.8 to like a 7.2. Like, and it's probably closer to a 6.8.
Yeah, I don't know if I can go all the way to 7. I think there's a lot of good stuff in this, and it feels like a commercial for like a lot of different stories I would like a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the least interesting part of the book to me was the Joker stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like if the main part of your book is the least interesting to me, it's like I just can't give you a high score.
Yeah. Yeah, and also like it just felt like a lot of the stakes and I just felt like this book had no ramifications.
Yeah, it's like if he already knows who the Joker is, then what's the mystery?
Yeah.
Like, why does this even matter?
Yeah. I'm like, we killed off Joe Chill.
Yeah.
He didn't matter. He didn't matter. We don't really see him anyways.
Yeah.
We kind of established that Batman and Joker know who each other are. They're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest bomb drop for me is when Barbara Gordon, you find out that Jim Gordon knows Barbara's Batgirl.
Yeah, and like you'll miss it if you don't really catch it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, honestly, I think going back to reasons I love Batgirl, that dynamic is one of my favorites in comics ever. Is him and her, going back and forth about whether or not she should be doing that.
Yeah.
Or like it's really just her interpersonal turmoil.
Yeah.
But I'm not fully completely in love with this story, but like I think you're right. I think it is bad. It's hard to give that. I don't want to give this that rating, but
it's not bad. Like it's definitely not bad at all.
It's just like wow. I think it is a lot of Batman's greatest hits, and I think that the art is amazing. Like literally, if you are trying to find a reason to pick up this book, the art is a great reason.
Yeah.
It is beautiful, and the story is good, but it's just not amazing.
Yeah, I feel like I really wish they would have done like maybe 6 issues.
Yeah,
and just kind of like divulged into more stuff and like made it more of a mystery.
Yeah,
than like, oh, there's 3 of them, and like the real Joker's like the one we've kind of been with the last like chunky years. So like, don't worry about it. And he knows who he is, so nothing really changes.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, it's like there wasn't really any like mind bending reveals.
Yeah,
and it was like I left not really learning anything new, or not feeling like I needed to learn anything new.
Yeah.
To change how I read comics and going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think that's a good place to leave it. But Jack, thank you so much for coming. Please tell our audience where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Lumberjach. I spell my name with an H at the end. It's weird.
It's awesome.
Or Making Observations.
Yes.
Or my podcast, the Rec Center Podcast, which me and my fiance do together. We are recording a new episode soon.
Good.
Hopefully tomorrow, maybe.
Good.
We take hiatuses because,
you got to take in the content that you're recommending.
You got to take in the content, and the world is crazy, and we get sidetracked. But
and you guys are actually planning a wedding. Keyword fiance.
Yeah, we're actually planning a wedding. But we watch things, and then we recommend them to each other, and then you can decide if you are interested or not by us chatting about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's it.
It is going to be so good. Please go listen to that podcast. It is one of my favorite podcasts. And Jack, I love your voice, but I have to say, Hannah's voice is the perfect voice.
Hannah has a perfect NPR radio voice.
It is so good. and actually, go follow her side hustle at Linden Ave.
Yeah, Linden Ave on Instagram.
Like
she makes earrings and jewelry,
and they're so cool
out of clay. They're awesome.
I didn't know what they're made of.
Yeah,
I've only seen pictures. They're so cool. So actually, oh my gosh, great Christmas gift.
Yeah.
This is coming out very soon, too, in Christmas time. So
perfect.
We got that covered. Make sure to stay tuned for next week, where I actually have another buddy named Jack. It's actually the three Jackers.
The three Jackers. Which one's the real one?
Which one is the real Jack? No, my buddy Jack is going to come on, and we're going to talk about four kids walk into a bank, which is an amazing indie comic written by Matt Rosenberg. And it is amazing. Who's a really great X-Men artist. Really fun series. So come check that out.
They set up a checking account without their parents' approval. It's crazy.
Spoilers.
Spoiler.
They want a toaster.
They get a credit card with a really high interest rate.
And so that's the story. And then make sure to go leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes.
Yes.
And follow Cameron Reads Comics on Instagram. Thank you guys. We will see you later.